Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Tom Stewart here. I'm with Liz Trotter. This is Smart Business Moves. And our guest today is Laura Pritchett. Hey, Laura, how are you today?
Hi. Good. Thanks
Hey,
for
Laura.
having me. Hi there.
We're going to be talking insurance and litigation and COVID and what's going on in certain states. And who knows where we're going to go with this. But this is all good stuff. And it's not necessarily fun stuff, but it's really important stuff because, as we've said before, it's not about how many homes you clean, but it's what you have to show for it at the end. And insurance is really an investment. And we're going to be talking about that. You know, it's not just an expense. You do insurance right, and you'll, it's not a matter if, it's a matter of when that you'll be glad that you paid attention to it. Hey, Marlo, how are you today?
Good.
Oh, this Monday afternoon. It's getting dark outside. What's that about?
Is that Tom?
It's getting dark outside. What's that about? I guess that's the whole time shift, standard time thing.
Yep. It's that time of year.
Molly's looking at me like she wants to be fed. I don't think she understands that the clocks have changed.
No.
She just thinks you're crazy.
Well,
You're running late.
She's probably right in that regard.
Good point. Yeah.
Before we get too deep into this, let's take a moment and talk about what the rest of the week is going to look like. We're going to be talking about insurance and COVID and litigation today. What do we have going on tomorrow, Liz?
So tomorrow we have Mark Baker coming on, and he proposed a spot that he's calling Tell It Like It Is Tuesday. So the idea here is that he's going to lay some hard truth on us. Some things that, listen, yes, there are lots of different ways to run a cleaning business, but there are some things that are no-brainers. Like, you have to be looking for profit. How are you going to have a profit? There's a good example of one. A lot of times businesses don't look at profit margin at all. They're like, okay, I got cash, so I've got money. So Mark's going to talk to us a little bit about those types of things.
And Wednesday, this is kind of funny. Laura and I were chatting a little bit before we went live about litigation and what's going on in certain states. And Don Finn used to be one of those plaintiffs' attorneys who used to sue companies like us who would have to be defended by Laura and people that she works with. He since kind of changed sides and started doing consulting work and training with cleaning businesses on teaching them how to be better employers so that we can get sued to begin with. Built a pretty cool business, and I think he wound up being bought out by a much larger company, but he still speaks. He's a professional speaker, travels all over the country, and I mean, he's the real deal. And he's going to be one of the presenters at the ARCSI ISSA virtual convention this year. And he was on a couple of weeks ago, and he's going to be back again Wednesday in an encore performance. And he knows his stuff, and he's very entertaining, and you want to see Don.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Which brings us to Thursday, and we've got On the Spot, and we've got a secret guest, and Liz has a super awesome clue for us today.
So we should probably change this to secret, because remember, Tom, we had not decided what we were doing this coming Thursday. If we were going to have a secret guest or if we were going to have a secret something else, remember?
We might call an audible on that.
Yeah.
But we're going to have a secret guest regardless, though.
Yeah, there's a secret here, but we might not be doing On the Spot. That's your clue.
Here's the dilemma, though, because last Thursday, they brought it.
I know. There were so many.
That was probably the best On the Spot we've ever had.
Yes, it really was. It was a great On the Spot. I know. So I'm curious, did it just take a while to get it? Gain momentum, and so we should do it again or cut our losses? Maybe one more week.
It was pretty awesome last week.
Yeah. Well, y'all Tell us what you think. Should we do on the spot or should we have a new segment on Thursdays? If you have an opinion, let us know what it is.
Do we want to talk a minute about what we would want to do with that segment? I mean, we've had some discussions. You want to share what the thinking is?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom. That'd be great.
We've been thinking about having a more formal, structured presentation, more of a lecture style with, a formal PowerPoint deck, maybe other downloads that we could share and go with it, looking more like some just class material that Liz and I have done in the past, but it wouldn't be just our stuff. We would have guests come on and share some of their best information with the idea of making it less conversational and trying to just pack more useful information in a 45-minute period.
So Leslie is saying that they brought it because the threat of discontinuing it.
Okay. Well, we can continue to do it and still throw in, a class a week or so. Laura likes the idea. I see you nodding your head.
I love the training you do.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, tell us what's been going on in your world.
So we have, not a lot has changed as far as the insurance is going right now with COVID, but I wanted to point out just a few things to keep top of mind. Since September, there's over 1,000 state and federal cases filed for COVID for business income claims. And business income was supposed to respond to property losses. And technically, there hasn't been a true property loss, such as like a fire. In Missouri is the only state so far that has allowed 2 cases to move forward. And if they move forward, it'll either be with a judgment or a possibility of a trial. But for right now, 37 states have litigation filed, over 1,000 claims, and we still have no resolve on this. So the insurance companies never intended to cover a pandemic like this to begin with. And if they did have their hand forced to pay these claims, they would probably go out of business at some point or another. But I think what people are looking to is if there was going to be some type of bailout, that why not do the insurance companies and then let all these other businesses survive and put these claims through. So it's been interesting. But we were thinking that in mass numbers that we would get somewhere with the litigation, and we just haven't yet. So we're still watching that.
Do you have some examples? I mean, who is suing who, and what's the nature of the litigation?
Oh yeah, so many of these counties and states, you weren't allowed to go to work. Places were completely shut down, and you were home. So what they're saying is, you've told us that we've had to be home. We haven't been able to open our doors. An example of it could be a movie theater. It could be, many of those are still shut down depending on what the phases are. And that's the other problem too. We're going into a second phase when some states are not even out of the beginning stages. So everybody is in a different time frame with this. So basically it could be an insured that is suing the insurance company for not giving them business income coverage. They're at a loss for not being able to open their doors.
Okay.
And typically, if you had a fire or a hurricane or a riot or different things, you would have been able to file a claim. And most of the policies, it's business income and actual loss sustained for up to 12 months. So they base it on the last 12 months, 18 months of your business.
But the policies are really pretty clear that, this isn't covered. I mean, we're in Charleston, South Carolina, and we get a hurricane on a, ever so often basis and wind up shutting down for a week or so. And unless our office gets blown away, which thank goodness it never has, that insurance doesn't really help us any, even though a lot of the homes that we clean maybe are damaged and we can't service them. I mean, that's not what business interruption insurance is designed to do, but the policies are really clear. I mean, there's no ambiguity there. So,
well, they're not as clear as what you think they are. And that's where the problem is. So now there are attorneys that are pouring out of the woodwork right now that are coming up to do these mass litigation lawsuits against these insurance companies. because of how things are worded in policies. They're not as specific or as clear as what they're saying they should have been. So they're not pointing fingers at anybody. Certain insurance carriers have already filed all their paperwork and already been told, no, nothing can happen. But is that true? We don't know. Missouri is the only one that's pushed these 2 cases forward out of 1,000. So right now, it's still up in the air. But I mean, if it did happen, there are a lot of businesses that have been suffering, and I'm hoping there's some resort somewhere, some resolve, maybe reduced premiums, or to have this coverage at least and be able to endorse later, because right now you can't even buy it. It's not available.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not even available. So it's not like anybody did anything wrong, that they didn't purchase the right coverage. Everyone probably purchased what they
Just can't
needed.
get it.
It's just you cannot purchase it. And it'll be kind of like employment practices liability, where for years it was so expensive and nobody wanted to buy it. And now employment practice liability is so reasonable and everybody should have it, although that's changing as well. But I was going to talk to you at the end on that. So right now, so the business income's the big topic. California, I wanted to bring up specifically because we have a little bit of a mess going on over there. In California, from March 19th through July 5th, they said for anyone who has employees that have gotten COVID-19, that they were to file workers' compensation claims, period. They were to put them through. The employer was to do all of this work. They were to get them submitted. At one point, they said that the employers were going to be responsible, and it was going to be included in their experience modification factors too, which isn't fair. Because as we all know, you can get COVID-19 from anywhere. You can pick it up at the grocery store. You can pick it up outside. So basically, they came back, and on September 17th, they passed a bill, and they said an executive order that said, okay, if an employer or an employee says that they didn't get it at work, you don't have to put it through as a workers' compensation claim. So now they're back. The majority of NCCI states, and if you don't know, if you're in an NCCI state, you can call, I can help you. But most of the NCCI states have come back and said, hey, look, if you have a workers' compensation claim, we are not going to hold it against you for your experience modification factor or of the claims moving forward. So if you present loss runs to those shop in the future, they can't hold this against you at all. And they will no
Laura, is that just for claims that are related to COVID, or is that just for any claims right now?
No, it's only claims related to COVID.
COVID. Okay.
So all the regular workers' compensation claims that you could have would still apply. Those are still normal. They'll count as your modification factor. But I want to make sure that everybody understands, as a business owner, when you get your experience modification sheet, they can be difficult to understand if you aren't experienced enough to read them. And my suggestion would be to go ahead and review them with your insurance agent. Give us a call. We can help you understand them. But when they're developing these experience modification factors, they're looking at basically your losses for the last 4 years. The last year basically doesn't count because they give the insurance carriers a year's time to get the claim adjusted, get the claim closed. And that's the key. These claims closed as soon as you can. And then they go back 3 years prior, and they basically develop the claims based on frequency and severity. Frequency didn't come into play so much as severity, and then years ago they changed it. So even frequency, if they're small claims, they're hitting the experience modification factor. So this shouldn't affect the majority of people, but you have to know what you're reading to make sure that somebody didn't make a mistake, because it could be just a mistake on the insurance company's part when they went to key something in that it could show on your reports. So just be mindful of that when looking at your full numbers. So that's what's going on in California. And then one big thing that is going on also, if you had employees that were actually home and you were paying them while they were home, and this is still going on in many states right now, if that is the case, there's a special code that you're supposed to be using for your payroll. And what the insurance companies, the majority, all of the NCCI states, and then many of the others have also trickled in as well. If you have paid them while they're home, you will not have to pay workers' compensation for those employees. It basically goes into zero. So when you go to do your audits, there's going to be a line item for that payroll. You need to make sure that you're deducting that out of that and that you're not being charged workers' compensation coverage. This is a big deal for a lot of states, especially where the rates are high. But so if you had anybody at home, just make sure that that's what you're doing. If you need help with your audit forms, reach out to your agent. If you'd like to reach out to me, I'd be happy to help you. And that leads me to one other item. So employment practices liability. For those of you that do not have the coverage, I am recommending that you buy the coverage like now. Basically, we're running into a situation that there could be an issue where the coverage may not be available in the future. So what's happened is because people have been let go, there's been so many lawsuits filed against different employers, and the rates and whether you qualify for coverage depend on how many people that you have had or have had to let go or laid off. So this is a perfect time for those people who do have employment practices liability. Many of those policies, you have access to an attorney, a free attorney. So what that means is when you have these policies and you say, wow, I have so-and-so as a problem employee and I have to let that employee go, you can actually reach out to the attorney and find out if you are following the correct steps to protect yourself from a future lawsuit, like what documentation do you need? What's the best day to let them go? How should you be presenting something? Do you need to have them sign things? And as you know, in every state, it's different. So there are policies out there that give you access to a free attorney. Just make sure that you're buying the right one. And then we have an HR portal. It's a free service to all of our networking partners. And basically, we would send you a login and a password. And the HR portal, you can, it's state specific. So if you were in multiple states, you could check and see what laws apply where, but you can download and customize your own employee handbook. You can find out about OSHA compliance, hiring practices, all information as if you had an HR in your office working, but it's a free site for you to be able to go on. And I warn people, it's kind of like Pinterest. Once you're on there, you're going to be on there for several hours, just to give everybody a heads up.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on in our insurance world. I think the audits is going to be key for everyone to make sure that you're saving money, and that you also make sure that these experience modification factors, when everybody's getting them, that they're accurate. And they do make mistakes, catch mistakes all the time.
Laura, Denise asking if we get coverage now, can it be can they withdraw the coverage later on?
Employment practices liability, yes.
Yeah.
You can, if that's what you're referring to, yes. So I do know some business owner policies have employment practices liability coverage included in there. That's not where you get access to an attorney. That's a throw-in coverage. It's usually $25,000, $10,000 of coverage. What I tell people with that, when you are facing litigation, even if you're in an at-will state and you had the right to let somebody go, the cost to defend yourself is what comes into play with these claims. It's not so much that they're making these large payouts to people, right? It's right. $500 to $800 an hour to defend yourselves. And that can be eaten up very quickly, especially, in states like California, where it's an employee-friendly state. There are several employee states, but California is the most employee-friendly that we've seen. So with that being said, if you purchase a separate standalone policy, depending on the size of the business, I've seen them anywhere from $900 and up. You'd have access to an attorney to call. So it's a good resource. Peace of mind more than anything. So
I can tell you that we've carried that insurance for a number of years, and we've used it on a number of occasions, and it's worth its weight in gold. I mean, you really, especially once you get to a certain size, you have to have that level of coverage.
Yeah.
Bridget has a question for you. It sounds like she's a client. You might want to reach out to her offline and maybe walk her through some of what her policy entails.
I will look it up for you, Bridget, and I will get in touch with you. You probably have some coverage included in your policy, and the HR portal, I'll make sure you have the login and the password. And like I said, it's a free service. Sometimes there's payroll companies that offer something similar, but there's a charge for it. There's no charge for our office.
What do you think of umbrella policies? I know, like a lot of GL type policies, maybe your cat. You've got everything's relative, I guess. $5 million doesn't go as far as it used to. Does it make sense to invest in an umbrella policy?
I think that every business should have an umbrella policy at some point. For new startups, when you're talking about costs, I would purchase employment practices liability for myself before I would purchase umbrella coverage. Most of the general liability policies have $1 million coverage. Higher than non-owned, you can get $1 million coverage. Auto liability $1 million, and then the workers' compensation, you can also get $1 million. So basically, the umbrella sits over top of those policies and acts as excess coverage. Where you definitely need it is if you have company-owned vehicles. You definitely need an umbrella policy no matter what. If you are doing any type of commercial work, you should also have an umbrella policy. That's where we've seen claims come through, as far as like slip and falls, the wet floors, different products. Residential, we've seen it, but it's been more on the auto side than anything. But every business at some point should have it. So as you grow, each year you should be reassessing your insurance coverage and seeing, what do I need? But you could go broke in a first year buying all the business insurance. So you've got to kind of figure out risk-wise what you're going to do.
It's kind of like, the more you have, the more you have to protect. And at that point, it makes sense to start layering it on.
Absolutely.
I know that, I've seen plaintiffs' attorneys use techniques where their initial demands are in the multi-millions of dollars, knowing that it's all going to be settled down at a lower number. But if you're sitting there with insurance that's capped at $1 million, that is just that's a bad feeling to have.
Absolutely. And we've had auto claims. We just had an auto loss 2 years ago, where an employee of one of our customers went through an intersection. She didn't think it was her fault at first, but with the police reports, it was her fault, and basically collided with another vehicle. And she ended up with severe injuries, but the other person ended up with brain damage. And when you have cases like that are ongoing, where it will be forever that this person is going to care, I mean, you're talking about, it's a lot. So we have seen in some instances too, you have to protect yourselves on your personal side too. So your homeowners, your auto insurance for yourselves personally, especially for anybody that has children, you have to have umbrella coverage, because if something should happen, they can come after your personal assets. And I've seen that where we've had somebody that's come to us that's had to sell their home before to pay a claim for a son who was underage that caused a liability accident. And I mean, they have to, it depends on the state where you are, but every business and everybody personally should have umbrella coverage. Personal umbrellas can start around $200. They're so inexpensive. And usually for business, you're looking at like $500 to $750 per layer of coverage.
Even something as dumb as a bad shot on the golf course can create a lot of litigation. It's nice to have the personal insurance as well.
Yeah.
I know that there was some discussion back when Congress was in session. They were trying to pass more relief bills. One of the points of contention, I guess, was how much benefit would go towards business insurance, I guess, to indemnify, maybe help the insurance companies with some of this litigation. I'm not clear as to exactly what that looked like, but do you know, Laura?
Yeah. So from what I understood from it, it didn't help with it at all. So they were able to use that money or use it towards other things. People were trying to do it to put it in their, like when they were trying to do their PPP loans, there was a line item for what your cost for insurance coverage was and how much you could apply for. And many of the people that had that down as one of the line items that got submitted, it wasn't included in their PPP loan when they got it. So what they did in the reverse, though, is they said, hey, workers' compensation, we're not charging you. Many of the insurance companies are trying to look at the general liability end as well, right? If you didn't have employees working and they were sitting home and you were still paying them, you should not have to pay for the liability end of it either. So far, we've only heard from one insurance company. It's Hartford Insurance that's willing to do that. Some of the other companies don't even do audits that we work with, and that might be why they're not doing it. But just across the board, that's still an open topic. But I will caution everyone to please, keep an eye on your expenses this past year, like what you've spent and where you spent it. Keep accurate records, because if there is a way to go back to things, you'll want to be able to have that. And I know some people don't keep stuff, so it's important.
And I guess one of the concerns that was out there was the concern that companies could be sued by either their employees or from clients, customers, that they would make a claim that they caught COVID, because you sent somebody into their home or you put an employee at risk and they caught COVID. Is there any liability there and any precedent being set in that regard?
There is. So the problem with this is that nobody is able to determine exactly where they've gotten COVID, right?
Right.
So that's where it is. The problem is anybody can be sued at any time by anyone. So if you are brought a lawsuit, whether you're an employer or if you're accused even by a customer of sending an employee into their home and giving that customer COVID, all of these claims still have to be submitted to the insurance carriers. And the problem with them is determining where they got the COVID. I mean, so they have to prove your net. So, and that's difficult to do right now because you can pick it up anywhere. So, but claims brought forward.
But we would definitely want to make sure that we continue using PPE, et cetera, while we're in this situation, right, Laura? You wouldn't want to be in a situation where they have pictures of your people without a mask, without shoe covers, no gloves, cleaning. That could
absolutely. They can show negligence on your part, it especially not wearing the protective equipment. That is not going to be favorable to you if you have to go to work.
Right.
So
you don't want to be in that position.
No, you don't do that.
In the term negligence, I guess, has a lot of special meanings in the legal world. And if you're like involved in litigation and if you're being accused of negligence, then the penalties and the risks and Laura, maybe you could explain a little bit. They can go after you personally as well if it's negligence, if I understand correctly.
Yeah. Well, if it's negligence, it depends also how your company is set up. Whether you're like how you filed. Are you an LLC? Are you a sole proprietor, incorporated, S corporation? Years ago, people used to do the LLC and they're like, oh, we can just hide behind that. And, if something happens, they can't come after us. That's not necessarily true anymore. So when it comes to court and varies by state, things can still happen. So when at all possible, if you can avoid the negligence, avoid it. If you know that, for instance, somebody came into your office and said, oh, I was at a party this past week or a week ago, and I'm not feeling well now, and then you send them into a customer's home knowing they're not feeling well, that's a problem. That's negligence without having them tested. So, it's just to be mindful of our circumstances right now, because nobody's gone through this before. It's a pandemic. So.
Yeah, and the training and the PPE and, doing all the surveys every day, making sure that everybody's, healthy, or at least, giving you the right answers to the questions, temperature checks. There's a long list of things you can do to put you on the other end of the spectrum where at least you can't be accused of being negligent.
Right.
I know in a number of states, there's this whole concept of treble the damages. Normally, somebody can claim that, you harmed me and the financial damages are this dollar amount. But if you're negligent, they can take that and multiply it times 3, kind of a punitive thing, because you were reckless.
And you have to be careful, because some general liability policies do not cover punitive damages. They won't. If they were designed to punish you by the court system, they may not cover that. They could cover regular negligence, but not punitive. So you have to be very careful in how things come across. But yes, definitely protect yourself. If you ever had to go to court on something, I would want to say, I've done all of what the CDC has recommended. I have followed these directions. I have made sure that my employees were safe and had the protective equipment to go into locations before we sent them out. So I wouldn't want to be the one in court saying, no, I didn't do any of that.
Right. That would not be fun.
And it's never a good strategy in legal cases to plead ignorance. It doesn't really work real well with legal cases. I know a lot of times people think that they're going to get away from any kind of punitive damages because, well, I didn't know.
Right.
That's not a good defense.
I want to give you a quick example on how that's happened and how detrimental it can be to a business. So hired and non-owned auto liability. Everybody should have it on every commercial auto policy ever written. If you have people that are using your cars or using their own cars in your business, your commercial auto policy should include hired and non-owned auto liability. So in the event that you have somebody using their car on your behalf, so you provide company cars, there are cars in the shop, they decide to take their car. Or your business model is they drive their own cars to and from different job sites. Everyone is responsible for their own insurance coverage. It's in their name, damages that they cause to their vehicle, damages that they cause to anyone. But in the event that they have an accident and they are found to be at fault and they don't have insurance or they don't have enough insurance, they could have no insurance or they could have the state minimum limits. You as a business owner can be held responsible because they were driving on your behalf. That is huge. So what I tell people is that every 6 months, set a tickler for yourself to make sure that you're asking for auto ID cards, making sure that people have coverage, because if you ever have to go to court, that's one of the things that's been brought up, and they say you were negligent as a business owner for not checking that. And you can say, no, I have a system, and every 6 months we make sure that everybody has their own insurance coverage, because even if they have it today, it could be gone tomorrow. We all know that. However, as a business owner, you have a policy set up for yourselves. You're doing what you can. And I know that when that's happened and people have gone to court, that has backfired, and hired and non-owned auto liability is one of the biggest ones. And that's going to happen right now, because if it's the choice of somebody paying rent or paying their auto insurance, they're going to pay the rent if they had to make a choice.
Of course.
And we're there. Right? So.
Yeah.
Kimberly has a question. She's telling us that in Colorado, they were never required to pay sick time, but now they do. Not thrilled about it. if they go out to a party and come here and infect my employees, so now we have to not only pay them why they are in quarantine but lose money, or if their family went in quarantine, I couldn't have them work. How can we, as a service-based business, survive? I don't know if this directly relates to the insurance part of this. I think a lot of this is the CARES Act and what we're obligated to do as employers. I think the sick pay, we get that back on the payroll deductions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
It's kind of hard to run your business, though, if you're losing your workforce under these circumstances. But I think that's just kind of the hand that we're dealt at the moment.
We're all kind of dealing with the same thing, which I think is Kimberly's point. Like, we're all dealing with it. How are we going to make it out? It's especially, nerve-wracking when we can see everybody's numbers going up again, right? I know our state, the government is talking about, or the governor is talking about locking us back down again to phase 1, where I think we're currently in phase 3. Because and our county specifically, because our county is really having a rough time of it. So it is nerve-wracking. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Europe, by a number of accounts, is several weeks ahead of where we are, and there are a number of countries that have been resisting, just trying not to lock down, but most of them are kind of conceding that it needs to be done. Most recently, England, announced that they're going to be locking down. France just did. Germany, a handful of others that England announced for at least the next month. And the thinking is it's going to be longer.
Scary.
Very.
Yeah, it is. But to the point that you're here for, Laura, while it is scary, on top of that, we want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves in the best ways possible. Do you see anything, because I know that you've been in this business a long time, as you look forward and you see what's going on, are there any additional things that you see that we should be doing that maybe we haven't thought about, or that is potentially going to be happening?
I would say no for right now. I think the biggest thing is when coverage does become available, we need to look at it. I think it's going to be costly when it first comes out. It's going to be like anything else. And we could be even a couple years off from even being able to buy this coverage. Yeah. So I would say for right now, I think the biggest thing is to protect yourselves and make sure that you have your workers' compensation coverage. Make sure that you have the general liability in case you're brought into a lawsuit for something. And definitely look into employment practices liability coverage just to protect yourself as a business owner. You all have put everything on the line. This is your livelihood. You want to protect. I think those are going to be the biggest things. There isn't anything right now to purchase.
To do. And then just make sure that we're doing everything that we can. Don't be negligent, like you said. Make sure that everybody's using PPE. And I know that there are a couple places. I was talking to somebody in my MMA group, and she said, around here that masks are not really a thing. So we're wondering if we should even have masks on in the house. But I'm thinking you don't want to be in the situation. So yes, regardless of nobody else wearing masks, your people need to have masks on.
Anything that you can do to just build the argument that you're being as responsible as you can be. ArcsyLearning.org has the COVID, has a COVID class specifically for house cleaning companies. we run all of our employees through it. I know a number of people that do. It's a 1-hour course, and it's relatively inexpensive, especially for ARCSI members. Doing things like that is giving you cover. You've got a long list of things that you can point to. It's like, there's nothing more that I can do as a company. Plus, you can tell your clients that you're doing that, and that creates a level of trust and comfort on that side too.
And also, I mean, to your point, Tom, I think that's great. They're not going to be looking at the cleaning company then, because it doesn't seem like I got it from them, because they do all the stuff. They take the classes, they wear all the stuff. And if it was them, wouldn't all their customers be sick?
Yeah.
So I do think that is really helpful.
I want to mention one thing that's happening on the commercial end of things, in case there's people that will do both. There were a lot of people trying to get in on this industry when all this happened. And, of course, it's all inexperienced people that are jumping in. And, they were going to kill COVID, and they were going to make all of these statements about. I just want to tell you that the insurance carriers have completely put a halt. It is so expensive for them coming in. If they are making any statements like that, if we are looking at websites and there's information on that, if they make a random phone call and the person answers and says they can do specific things that we know that they can't, they're not insuring them, or the rates are so high that they're not taking the coverage. They're not even getting in the business. So
what are those things?
So when they're saying that they can kill the virus, you can only say that you sanitize and disinfect, but to make a statement that you can kill it, and then because you can get it back in there very quickly again. Yeah. So these random statements that they're making, I just think that the insurance carriers have been on top of it. And I'm even talking about surplus lines carriers, which are our high risk carriers. They've even taken a stance on it. They're not going to let just people jump into this without having training. And that's why it's so important, the training that you give, that people pay attention.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things that we've observed over the years under just normal times, that there's a fair amount of business turnover, that, there's a low barrier to entry to get into the house cleaning business. Likewise, it doesn't take much to get out of the house cleaning business either. Have you noticed any changes in terms of the number of policies you're writing for companies in this industry compared to years past?
I would say that in general, business has been up over the last several years. But opening and staying open are two different things. So for our agency, for the longest time, you had to have training. You had to be members of trade associations. You had to partner with different organizations that we knew before we would take you. So I know that there are other agencies that don't have requirements that will take people on. And my goal is to take someone on and help them to grow and to stay in this, and to not, dwindle away and not get the training that they need. So, but we have seen a lot of businesses enter. But I don't think that they can be successful without people like yourselves who've been in this, who can offer the advice, give guidance, show examples, training. It's a must.
Let's see.
One of the things that I guess I've been reading recently, since a lot of people are working from home, that there's been an increase in cyber attacks and cyber crime. And I know that there's a new insurance instrument that's been out for the last few years, I guess, a cyber insurance policy. Is that something that would be relevant to a house cleaning company?
It is. Most of the business owners' policies we write include some cyber coverage. It also includes some data breach coverage. So if for some reason your information from one of your customers were to get out and somebody was to take it and use it, they hacked into your system. But it's the same with the cyber as well. So yes, most of the policies are now including some coverages. There are separate policies. I will say cyber coverage is probably one of the least expensive coverages that you can buy in the industry. And typically it can be added right onto a package or a business owner's policy. So I would definitely invest in that if you haven't, but that's why it's so important to sit down and do an insurance review. A lot of times an agent will do it on the back end. Some people, some insurance carriers provide these coverages and there's no charge. So we will look through policies and say, oh my gosh. So for instance, Tom, you have multiple locations. On general liability, there's a form that's aggregate per project, aggregate per location. In your case, I would have the aggregate per location added and the aggregate per project because you have multiple states that you're covering. So your $1 million of general liability is no longer for a blanket for any claim that comes through under your policy. It's per location or per project, depending on how you have it set up. So it's different on every account, and it's the same with the cyber or different things that come through. It's assessing someone's risk and determining what coverages that they need.
Well, you've got some fans here, Laura. You know, Leslie, rightfully so. You know, Laura is the best there is in terms of understanding the nuances of the cleaning industry and why insurance is important to them and what instruments and how that should be structured to our benefit. Paul, you're the best. This is cool.
And it does not feel cut and dried to us. And you speak about it like it is, you know, just so easy, but it's not easy. And you make it seem much simpler. Like, I really love that you just are like, get this, get this, get this, get this. Just make sure.
Yeah.
It's important. This is the reason why. Just go out and do it. Super nice.
And one thing that we do on our end too, and if it's helpful for anyone, we do policy reviews, and I'm always doing coverage comparisons. Sometimes we'll get people that'll say, oh my God, that is just so expensive. Well, depending on what the coverage is, it could be expensive, but you also don't want to go bare bones and not have what you need. You need peace of mind coverage where you can sleep at night, especially property damage claims and crime claims are huge in your industry, right? Third-party dishonesty claims from your employees maybe stealing from a customer, or property damage claims. You know, these homes are getting appliances that are so valuable, or you know, these neighborhoods that are going up. My gosh, I mean, it's money, and you need to make sure that you don't have a small property damage limit. It's not going to cover anything if something happens. So I don't mind doing coverage reviews for people. I'd be happy to do quotations or reviews, but yeah, it's just making sure that as an industry that we're working together to keep our claims down. So the more that we know, the more we can work with each other to make sure that we have the right coverages and that we're not left hanging and giving ourselves a bad name in the world, because, you know, it's
Well, I definitely want to send mine over to you for a review. We use the Hartford, Laura.
Yeah.
And I'll definitely take you up on that. That sounds like a no-brainer to me. Why would anybody not? I mean, I every time I've ever heard you speak, I'm like, yes, I need all of that. I just feel like you're the expert, and I feel nervous having not your insurance. I'm like, oh.
Well, I will look at it for you. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. I will send that over. Thank you so much. Where do we send it to, Laura? What do we do? How do we do that?
You can send to my email, and it's L, and then it's actually Bianchini. It's B as in boy, I-A, N as in Nancy, C-H-I, N as in Nancy, I, at moodyinsurance.com. And you're welcome to call me on my cell phone if anyone would like to. It's 301-919-8010. And just, you know, anything that you need. I do tell people, normally it takes businesses 10 to 14 days to do comparisons and quotations. Now with COVID, it's a little bit longer.
Of course.
You never want to rush an insurance company. So do
Of
your
course.
work. Like I work on my renewals for my clients like 90 days to 120 days out when I start marketing, and I do things on the background, on the back end where they don't see them. But if you're calling to get quotes or do comparisons, be mindful of that because you don't want to rush them. You want to put your best look of your policies up front for them to make you the top when they're looking at something like this was done in advance. We want to work on this account. This is something, where they're being proactive. You just want to put a good light on it.
Yeah, that sounds so smart. Absolutely.
Laura, would you like me to put your email address in the chat?
Oh, sure. That'd be great. I will do that.
It's there.
Yep.
Marla's got a question. She's one of your clients, and she's wondering about some of the additional coverages that you're talking about. I guess wondering the best way to go about adding them.
Hi, Marlo. I'll go ahead and look at your policies for you and see what we've included. I don't know that we have all lines of business for you, but I will look for you.
Dang, I wish I had money right now.
Truly though, you need to look at your insurance agent as a partner. And I know that there's too many people in this industry that they never even speak to their insurance agent. And you really need to be, you got questions, you got problems, you're not sure about how to approach certain things where there could be some liability and risk associated with it. There's a chance that, you might get sideways with an attorney. Your insurance agent needs to be somebody who knows what they're doing, and Laura certainly does, and somebody that you can just reach out to and say, hey, I'm not filing a claim or anything else. I got this situation. I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah, thank you. All claims, just so everybody knows for Moody, all claims go through our office. Nothing goes to the insurance company without talking to us first.
Oh.
Legally, I'm supposed to tell you that all claims are supposed to be reported to the insurance company. My legal.
Which is exactly the way you want it, because sometimes you think that you need to file a claim and Laura will talk you out of it. She might.
Or sometimes I might need to talk to that claimant directly. Sometimes they just want to hear from another person and not you.
Right.
And it removes you, and it could be helpful to you as well, that there's just another person there. So, yeah.
Absolutely, because they don't know you, and they might feel like you're trying to. I've had that situation actually, where a lot of you have heard where about the time I flooded a house, and they just wanted to hear from the insurance company that I wasn't trying to get over on them or trying to get out of it, or my liability. They wanted to hear that who was liable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, do you guys have any more questions for Laura? How can I get more information? Yeah. It's a great question, Chase.
Yeah. Well,
and Chase had said earlier also, Laura, that she is new to business. She just opened her cleaning business. She said she did work.
Oh, yeah, I'm putting my email in real quick for you guys.
Cool.
It's I already dropped it in chat here.
She probably can't see it on her side. We forgot to tell her up on the top. Yeah. She's doing it in chat.
Yeah, I'll drop this in there again.
Thank you.
Although, Laura, you got a typo in there, Laura.
Did I really? I'm sorry. I don't have my glasses on. Tom, can you fix
That's okay. People can figure it out. Moody Insurance.
How about insurance?
You got your name right. So that's the important part, right? That's the harder part to get.
So I wanted to say for new ventures coming into this industry, it could be difficult getting insurance coverage from standard insurance carriers, but your experience counts. So even if you're a new venture and you've been doing this for a while, we can actually use that. But the other part is if you are a member of a trade association or training groups, such as yourselves, it gives you a leg up with these insurance carriers, and we have access to them where you can get preferred rates even coming in. So keep
Wow,
that in
that's
mind.
great to know.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for the clarity on that, Alexandra. So that's great to know that you'll want to use your experience when you're having that conversation. Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. I know that a lot of times people have run into that. I can't get insurance. I have to have it. I can't get it. All right.
Right.
And Laura, I would assume if people have general questions, there's plenty of information on your website that could be useful.
Yep, there is. And then there's, I also can send some information. The biggest thing, like I said, it's a free resource for the HR portal. For those of you who don't have a HR manager on staff, you're welcome to ask for a login and a password, and we'll be happy to send you that. But we're trying to get everyone ahead of having employment liability practices claims.
Okay.
Yeah. I love that.
Are you thinking that we're going to be seeing more of those in the months and years ahead?
I'm kind of hoping that we're I'm hoping we're like leveling out a little. I think that with the second phase coming through, we could see more, but we're just trying to figure out what everybody's doing still. The majority of my county is still home. So if we go to work, we have to have a mask on in our offices as well. So it's very different. Our employer hasn't had us back. We're all working from home right now. So it's going to just be for everybody.
Tom, I think it would be good too if you could drop the link to the resource page on here, because a lot of people are wanting to check their numbers and all of that. And we have a lot of good resources that way too.
The best part of that HR portal is being able to download and customize your own employee handbook. I absolutely love that part because it's free. So for those who don't have a handbook, it's a great resource. I will tell you this, you'll want to talk to an attorney, because if you have an employee handbook, you'll want to use the employee handbook. Sometimes an employee handbook will hurt you if you don't use it.
Right. It can work against you.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
If you ever find yourself in litigation, your employee handbook is going to be a big topic of discussion. And if there's things that aren't in there that should be, that's a problem. If there are things that are in there that maybe shouldn't be, that's a problem. If there are things that are in there that you say you do that you don't do, that's a big problem. So it's not an issue till it's an issue, and then it's an issue.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah.
And again, it's not a matter if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah.
Play this game long enough, you'll be there.
And the bigger you get, the bigger target there is on you.
Laura, as always, you are bringing it. And this is good information. A lot of people look at insurance as just an expense, like a commodity, and we just want to try to do it with at least as amount of money possible. But, that's not the way. That's not a smart business move. That's not, from a cleaning business standpoint. If you want to grow a successful business and be professional, you need to have the right coverage, and you need to invest in the right coverage, and you don't want to spend your money on things that you don't need. And as you grow, your needs change, and it's like everything else. You're going to have to spend more on insurance, but it's protecting the value that you've already built. And if you look at it that way, over time, you'll be glad you did.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. We're at the top of the hour. We're we're done here for today.
Yeah. Thank you so
Thanks.
much, Laura. Big help
Thank
for
you.
everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be back here tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern with Mark Baker telling it like it is. You guys have a good evening. Thanks again, Laura. We'll see you soon.
know.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.